Mr. Bederow.
Thank you, Judge. Honestly, go fuck yourself, sir. You don't say that, okay? You don't lose a trial where a jury acquits someone and finds them overwhelmingly not guilty and say, I gave my sincere obligation to look into this, and I'm telling you all I saw when she's guilty. Again, respectfully, go fuck yourself.
Is that a fair characterization of what you said? Your Honor.
I want to hear objection before I hear a word out of your mouth.
Objection.
Overruled. Sit down. Oh, I said overruled. Sit down.
Swear again like that. That was, no, I mean, whatever. That was, I shouldn't have done that.
A few moments later.
You, as a prosecutor, have got to be out of your fucking mind.
Nose.
Dude, Jimmy, look at those ears.
The ears don't bother me as much.
No, I don't trust a man. I don't trust a man with a lobe like that. No,
really,
not a fucking chance.
The mouth is butthole to me.
Very thin, paper thin.
The nose.
Oh, the nose.
The brows.
Well, listen, I will tell you though, I kind of like a fucked up nose on a guy.
I like a big old honker. I like a big nose.
Old nose. Give me that beak, bitch. You know,
yeah,
like, I'm into it.
Come over here, cluck cluck.
Yeah.
I see some chickens that went moving on up in my biz, cluck cluck, running. You gotta be with the kids, the kids, the kids, the kids, the kids, kids.
And I go, oop, clutch, clench, kegel. We did it all. And I go, oh, and what happened? And they go, well, we just got 4,000 plus pages, bitch. And I said, stop it. Show me it. Take me to Unimpound Town immediately, if not sooner. So what happens?
The bitch is here.
Why are you at a football game? Are you a Fonz correspondent?
Well, no, because it's only for men over 30. Okay? Have a great night, boys. Fuck off.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
Hey, Blues Clues, motherfucker.
Hello, lovies. Sorry for the delay. I forgot how to use StreamYard. How are we? Okay. Today is Thursday. It is August 18th, 2026. And we are doing a midweek service. We are doing a midweek conversation and a legal breakdown with our emotional support attorney. It is attorney Mark Bederow. He is here right after work. Okay. In his work ensemble, and he's here for us. So we have a lot to discuss. We are going to go through basically overarching themes and talk about calling the balls and strikes like only him and I would like to. All right. So introducing, he needs no introduction, the man, the myth, the legend, attorney, Mr. Bederow. How are we?
How are you? Except it's not after work. It's a break in work.
A break, a break in between work because you're just making it happen for me on a Thursday.
It's 4 o'clock. You can't be shutting down at 4 o'clock.
Yes, you can if you're up at 5 a.m. and you're doing things then.
I was up before 5 this morning, but that's okay. Let's not compare stories.
That's true. I understand. Well, so we haven't actually met and talked about this. You've been very busy this summer, and our last Sunday service, I think, was in mid-July, Mr. Bederow, and you have been, I hope, having a very good summer. I will say you might have brought the Boston Red Sox a little bad luck. I won't hold it against you, but it happened.
I should be banned from going ever again. What a freaking joke. They're on a heater of heaters. I show up and it's 5 in a row, although they're ahead today right now. They've got the bases loaded and okay, we'll see. They're up 1-0 in the fourth. I've got it on in the TV across the way here.
Got a guy. All right. So, but I did see you on with Brother Counsel. You did a week 1 review with him for the Clancy trial. I know that we've discussed this intermittently since really this case kind of came to light in our Commonwealth because I had been kind of covering it, going over the lawsuit, going over the motions, everything that happened in court. We went, and then all of a sudden now it's been trial. And I think that this trial, Mr. Bederow, has been not only incredibly polarizing, it has been incredibly heartbreaking, so difficult on so many levels. And your expert opinion is required to have us all kind of come back down and realize, go back to the law, go back to what everything means, get back to the basics, because I think it's so highly emotionally charged. And that's why I appreciate your take.
Well, I mean, the trial it's going to be as emotional as anyone can. I mean, a woman strangled her 3 children to death after sending her husband away to do that. So, that's horrifying to anyone. But the law, particularly in Massachusetts, when it relates to what used to be politically incorrect called insanity, but now is, lack of criminal responsibility in Massachusetts or in New York, a different name that's also politically incorrect. Basically, there are 2 issues that the prosecution has that are going to be tough, notwithstanding the fact that it's pretty easy to prove that she literally is responsible for physically causing the death of her kids. But, they have to show in the first instance, assuming they establish beyond a reasonable doubt that she did it, which, let's be honest, a 5-year-old could try the case and establish that. That fact is not really the issue, but there are still 2 other thresholds they have to clear, in which they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, unlike the law of most other states, which would require the defense to prove what we're talking about in what's called an affirmative defense, which is not the case in Massachusetts. So the burden is on the prosecution. They've got to show that, she didn't know the difference between right or wrong, which most states have that. And the classic response to that is, oh, well, if there's any evidence of planning, then that would tend to show somebody knew right from wrong. If there's any consciousness of guilt, that shows they knew right from wrong. If they showed some attempt to evade detection for the crime, that would tend to show. And, there is some of that evidence in this case, with, she sent the husband out for food and then did it. The evidence is that she looked up certain things, which may suggest that she had thoughts or whatever about doing this. But Massachusetts has this other component, which is this idea of, an inability to conform your conduct to the way that the law requires, which is kind of a mushy thing that is kind of the point in this case. I mean, if she was in such a state of postpartum psychosis and being bandied about with all this medication and this and that and changing this from that, with doctors who, if nothing else has been established from what I've seen in the trial, are frighteningly inexperienced and incompetent to be dealing with someone that was as sick as she was. If she doesn't know or has the lack of ability to conform her conduct because of that state of psychosis, then they're going to lose. And that's really the element that the prosecution, at least at this point, seems to be struggling on. They can show she did it. They can show that there was some conscious level of understanding right from wrong. Again, sending the husband out, those kinds of things. But where is the conclusive evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that she was not so afflicted with this illness and psychosis that she should have been able to conform her conduct to the law? And, you're only in the case in chief, and already this case feels really choppy, not going well. You haven't even heard from a defense expert yet. Now, you haven't heard from a prosecution expert either on this issue. But this is the part of the trial where the prosecution ought to be, toes are tapping. This is pretty straightforward. It's going well. And from day one. They seem to have been over trying the case.
Yes.
Seem to have lacked any sincere appreciation of the mental illness, almost trying to poo-poo it, suggest that it's not real, almost trying to suggest that, this woman was just a bitter, upset, selfish person who wanted to just, end her kids' lives because she didn't want to deal with it. And they can try the case any way they want, but it's not an effective way. And I mean, the jury ultimately still has to deal with this, but they're not doing so good. I mean, there's a lot of people who feel extraordinarily sympathetic to a woman who strangled their kids to death. That's pretty rare.
It sure is. I think that there is something to be said, though, Mr. Bederow, for the fact that there was these attempts and clearly documented history of seeking help, seeking treatment, and what those providers did, in my opinion, whether it be from Tufts or Gelada, even from yesterday, Letitia Dukes, like you're seeing what I feel like is the industrialized healthcare complex in this country. And it's shining a huge light on the fact that when we have these systems and everything is put into place of like Epic and charting and how we're documenting things where it's taking out that humanity, it's taking out that aspect. And for them to say one more time to me, but she was suicidal, or we thought that she had a suicidal ideation, it was passive, and she didn't have a plan. Like, this is why we didn't section her, or this is why we didn't do A, B, C, or D, because she told me that she didn't give me a concrete plan. It's glaring, the lack of resources and trained eyes that are missing things that could lead to something like this.
Well, it's disgraceful. I mean, this woman, whatever she is or isn't in terms of a murderer or somebody who was, not responsible because of her psychosis, it should have been obvious that she was a ticking time bomb to be given her mental health struggles, what she's dealing with, and the level of care, if any, that she had is quite lacking. And if nothing else, once again, the failures of the Massachusetts government are on national display to see what a farce the system really is out there. It's horrible that it ended up with this, with 3 dead children, but you've seen the doctors clearly failed her. Seems like they missed a lot of red flags. There's certainly a fair argument to say that the prosecution is just beyond tone deaf in how they're handling this. Not that they're prosecuting it. I mean, they have a right to do it. It's not a frivolous prosecution. It's not
Right.
bad faith. I have my questions, having dealt with some of these cases myself, as to how the hell we're in court as opposed to agreeing that maybe there was an alternative way here, particularly since they had the support of the family, which is a big deal. That's a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
but if they made the decision that they're going to try this case and accuse her of murder, their complete lack of appreciation for the mental illness and poo-pooing it, just suggesting that it's some kind of sleazy after the fact defense attempt to, let her get away with it almost. It's just, they just seem off. They seem off strategically. They seem off temperamentally. They seem off just the way they're not recognizing that she was mentally ill. I'll, for the life of me, never understand that if they were going to try the case, why they didn't just own her mental illness and just say, absolutely, she had all kinds of mental health problems. But, when you were picked as jurors, you said you'd follow the law. And the law is, if she knew right from wrong and she, should have been able to conform her conduct to what the law requires, then your duty requires you to convict her. But instead, their way of just kind of suggesting she's faking the suicide attempt, she's selfish on this. There is a tone deafness here. And, we'll have to wait and see what the jury does. But, as I said to Martin last week when we talked about it, somebody has to take emotional control of the courtroom in a case like this. And it's the defense entirely. It doesn't mean that they get the verdict necessarily, but I mean, does anybody watching this relate more to what Reddington's doing or to what the prosecutor's doing?
Reddington, yeah.
Yeah.
No, hands down. So interesting that you say that, because I wanted to kind of touch with you the kind of strategy of the prosecution. The Commonwealth is, as you're saying, Mr. Bederow, really minimizing the mental health component, really minimizing diagnoses, including postpartum depression, anxiety, and psychosis. And the most egregious part is, in my opinion, is the minimization of the suicide attempt when there is a transection of a spinal cord, and resulting in paralysis and wheelchair bound for the rest of her life, natural and otherwise. Like you're seeing in real time what we saw at the arraignment, where they were basically saying since the beginning that, like, oh, basically Lindsay Clancy is sitting in a chair because she's lazy today. She's in this bed under restraints because she is just faking it. And it's palpable because Judge Sullivan is saying, hey, you continue to kind of go down this road and you're going to have to see things that are going to come up and that are going to be challenges with that. And then the Commonwealth says, well, no, we didn't say that it was not a serious attempt. All we're saying is if she wanted to do it, she could have done it a different way. And how callous and insane is that to hear in a courtroom?
Well, it's callous, it's stupid, primarily more than anything else. As a lawyer in a courtroom, and certainly as a prosecutor, because the prosecutor is supposed to wear the white hat, your only stock in trade is your credibility. And
right.
they are throwing that down the drain by making these, with the judge. Jerry doesn't hear all of this clearly. But and the other point is, why are they doing this? Why would you die on the hill of whether her suicide attempt was real or not? Again, if the theory is it's a consciousness of guilt, that she killed her kids and then decided, oh my God, I did a terrible thing and I just don't want to live. It's a fair argument. Make the argument to die on the hill over whether a woman who tried to cut herself, jumped out of a window that they claim maybe didn't jump, whatever, and is now paraplegic, sitting there in a wheelchair. The jury saw her yesterday. I did see the highlights of that. I didn't see it live. I've seen a lot of really sad and pathetic, disturbing things in a courtroom in 20-something years. That's right up there for the worst. Just seeing a defendant wailing, in that manner, in the jury. And, the angle I saw, you could see the prosecutors and they weren't smirking, they weren't laughing, but they had this, in my mind, look where it's hard to explain, but they just were like, God, they just don't like it. But I wonder if they also recognize this is so powerful for the jury to see, and any sympathy that goes in her direction is only going to help. Whatever, again, you think she did or didn't do. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, forget the law, who just think this woman belongs in prison because she killed her kids.
Right.
And, those people shouldn't be on the jury if they can't follow the law, clearly. But, there's many people who have very little sympathy for her, obviously. But to see that display yesterday, which, again, when you watched it, it was pathetic. Not in the sense that, oh my God, why is she doing that? That's pathetic. But just watching somebody completely dehumanized and broken, with the lights shining in open court in front of the jury, all these people watching. autopsy photos of young children, and you just sit here and you say, wow, this is it's hard to believe this is happening, actually. And we don't know what happened pre-trial, by the way, with the prosecution and defense trying to see why they couldn't come to an agreement. I've said this to other people before, but in the few times that I've had these types of situations, thank God, they've all worked out where everyone agreed, because the nightmare scenario for every lawyer, and certainly Reddington's living it in real time now, is, my God, do I have to try a case where a woman strangled her 3 beautiful children and somehow, deal with the jury on that point? You don't want to do that, obviously.
No, not at all. And there feels to me, so I don't typically cover cases that have that involve minors or children, death of children, because I just can't, Mr. Bederow. It's too much. I covered Harmony Montgomery out of New Hampshire, and that was like the last case I did, because I was like, oh no, it's just like, it's so heavy. But hearing everything in this case, and the repeated, or the witnesses that, I understand there needs to be, you can't stipulate to everything. That cannot be a case. I know that obviously Mr. Reddington would like you to be like, hey, we're stipulating to this without going into the details. But specifically yesterday, it felt gratuitous almost. And I personally had to turn it off, because I was, it's like overwhelming on a human level.
Well, people need to be hosed down a little bit about this issue of stipulating.
Yeah.
It knows that the defense, before the trial started, said, we'll basically eat all the conduct. She did it. Let's just go straight to the mental health issue. That's really not a thing. Just people who don't do this for a living. It doesn't really work that way. You generally don't have bifurcated murder trials and say, okay, I did it, but I'm not responsible. So they're allowed to introduce evidence. They're allowed to prove the elements of the crime and prove their case. And from their perspective, they want to do it because they want to punch the jury in the mouth, and every opportunity they get, remind the jury how awful this conduct is, and hope that the jury will just look at Clancy and just find her so repulsive and her conduct so hideous that they just say, the hell with it, we're convicting her and going on. Having said all that, the minutia and the prejudicial material that they just keep going and going, it's too much. Lawyers have this thing, it's called Rule 403 in the Federal Rules of Evidence. Most states either have it codified or it's in their common law, and it's a very basic principle that, even evidence that is relevant or has, probative value, if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the prejudicial impact on the defendant or the other party of admitting the evidence, it becomes inadmissible for that purpose. And there's a pretty fair argument here that to say getting into the minutia of autopsies and other things, clothes and how this one was found and that one looked, that is it relevant? By definition, yes, they have to prove a murder, but is it probative that much? Or is it much more prejudicial? And I think we've reached a point where most of this is much more prejudicial. And although the court was never going to allow all the evidence to be stipulated to, you can see the concerns of what's happening here. On the other hand, you wonder if this is going to backfire on the prosecution, because they just seem so wooden, so focused on everything but the issues that really matter. I mean, they're just trying to dirty her up, which I understand. I mean, they recognize that if a jury despises her, that's their best chance. They recognize that, there's ample evidence of mental health issues, and that the law in Massachusetts is, on these kinds of cases, is very favorable for the defense, just because it's not an affirmative defense. I mean, and it has this element of, being not able to conform your conduct to the requirement of the law, which is a very mushy concept, by the way. I mean, what
Right.
the hell does it mean? It lends itself to the argument that her psychosis was so great, she was so imbalanced from all the medication and everything going on, that it made her unable to do what the law requires. And you can be sure that's what her experts are going to say.
Absolutely. I do question with the prosecution as well. Does that stance, does that kind of the stoic nature and the repetition in which they have no problem bringing up almost a desensitization to what they've dealt with for the last 3 years in their office, it just feels like coming from women, right? We're looking at this is and all in all, it's a mother, it's a woman who did this, who by her own hands and stipulated admittingly, there is no contest on who did this. It's the state of mind. And was she able to, quote, conform to the norms of society? Was she able to do that? Or was she a mental defect at that time? And the question I have is like, do you think this comes across very poorly or matter of fact? Like, are they being, cut and dry with it from the Commonwealth side? And it's like, we're keeping the emotion, we're trying to keep it in checks and balances, or does it seem cold? Because I'm reading it as freezing ice, frigid cold from that side.
I think they look cold. I mean, look, they're not ace litigators. They're not charismatic, and they're probably not charismatic in other cases they try, but whatever. I don't think they're stoic either, though. To me, if they were stoic, they would get in front of this and say, you're going to hear a lot about this woman's postpartum, depression, moving to anxiety, and yes, maybe even moving to full-blown psychosis, and how she was out there looking for help and how she had very inexperienced doctors, but that the law doesn't excuse this as long as she knew right from wrong and the evidence will support that, and that she was able to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law and the evidence will support that. I think that would be stoic. I think that would be credible. Instead, they're, doing all these things where they're, suggesting that the suicide attempt was kind of half-assed, if you will, or all these other things about her own selfishness. And they're also sneaking in other things where, I wonder how the jury will affect this. I mean, part of the thing that I saw today, I only saw maybe 20 or 30 minutes. I had it on in the background, and they had the Celebrate guy on from the state police. And they were doing an example of contact names. And the example the prosecutor used was mom, my mother. And that struck me as no accident. That was another reminder to let the jury know that mom is the killer here, okay? That, a child and their mother should love each other and spend time together and all of that. And of all the examples that she used about contacts, this is not the biggest deal in the world, obviously, but it just struck me as, if I'm a juror sitting there, is this just a little cute, a little clever, if you will? Their manner of presentation, I don't think it's great, but, they're just trying to get out the fact that she killed them and remind the jury every 30 seconds that she killed them and it's horrible and she did it. I mean, that's what they have.
And, if you look at the case in its totality and everything that they have presented, I feel like there are holes that are poked in some of their largest complaints, right? Like with the Commonwealth coming out and doing the order of which they are alleging the children were unalived in the opening statement that had to have a corrective, a curative instruction. Then there is this idea that they're perpetuating about the fakeness of the suicide attempt or the basically lack thereof her mental health struggles. and also stating that she was then doctor shopping, right? Like now you're like, she's doctor shopping and wants all these drugs. P.S. Spoiler alert, she doesn't want to take the drugs. She's quite literally not compliant in certain plans of care due to fear based on her knowledge and training and experience of, I don't want to be on a benzo. I have a fear of an addiction to it. She's not taking these. She doesn't want to nurse while she's on specific medications that could affect her milk supply. Like, what are we doing? Pick a lane here, guys, and actually have your facts straight before you look repeatedly like incompetent or that you're spinning the narrative. And I think that the juries in the past that we've covered, you can see afterwards that they're like, I didn't like that you were spinning it. Just literally give us the facts. No straight, no chasers.
I'll never understand why, if you try a case like this with a woman who is clearly ill, again, ill does not translate to not guilty or not responsible by reason of mental disease or defect. You can be mentally ill and commit a crime.
Of course.
Okay? That's not
be responsible. Yeah.
The issue is whether you appreciate right from wrong or you have an inability to conform your conduct to the law. And I just don't understand why the process, I mean, if you're going to bring this case, you have to dive into that pool, into the deep end, not dip your toe in the shallow end and own it. And just argue that the law is the law is the law. You swore to uphold it. It's natural to feel some degree of just awful about what she was going through, but that doesn't excuse under the law what she did. That's the argument for a prosecutor in this case, not that she's some selfish, this, or was like half-assed trying to kill herself, or was looking for a way to do this. To the extent she's looking for a way to do this, you wonder, you're just supporting the defense, but she can't conform herself because she's in the throes of a psychotic crisis. They just seem to me, the word we've used in other places is they don't understand the nuance of mental illness. And it's just, it's a clunky presentation. Now, we'll see what the jury does because the conduct is so hideous. I mean, it's as awful as you'll ever see. So you just don't know how a jury is going to react to this.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's just like, even with the presentation of Patrick Clancy, because I didn't get to talk to you after his testimony, I often think of the prosecution, which I know that they are to do justice and to ensure the public safety, and there's a whole upholding of their ethical bounds. But I think normal or regular people would think, hey, it is to provide justice for a family that has lost, right? So Patrick is the family who has lost everything. He lost his 3 beautiful children, and he lost Lindsay that day too. Let's be clear. He lost his entire life.
But he deserves not to lose one more thing, and that's his integrity and reputation. And some of the stuff that you see getting slung around the internet and elsewhere, either suggesting that he somehow was involved, or you have these idiot ex-FBI agents who pose as experts telling you why doesn't he have responsibility for this, and he should be held accountable for child endangerment. I mean, this is somebody, and this is just one example of these people who styles themselves and trades on their profession as a so-called expert. And to do that to this man who's, he lost everything. He lost his 3 kids. He lost his wife, obviously. He got remarried. He, reestablished his life. But I mean, these people who criticize him for, attempting to help, not seeing everything. By the way, what is he trained in, really? It's just a husband.
Yeah.
You want a husband to know your wife. He knew she was struggling, but are we supposed to think that he's responsible because he went to get dinner, that, that she would do such a terrible thing? So, what they're doing to him online is just not, I mean, it's only a few people, but when you see a charlatan who is, styling themselves as an expert attacking him, it's just sick.
Agreed. And remember what you put out into this world sometimes, like it's imperative that people should think, and especially that if they're presenting themselves in one way and are really another, it's shameful to see. And I know exactly who you're speaking on. I do question though, when we talk about him going out and the Commonwealth saying that the plan for the supper to go get dinner right that night, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say he comes home, okay, goes upstairs and he takes a shower and is in the bathroom for 15 minutes. This all still, like, saying that was the plot, or that is what was specifically, that was the only time it could have happened. If she had, let's say, if it is actual postpartum psychosis, that can happen in minutes. You can go into a psychosis and come out of. This is not like you are 14 days. There is a certified period. You need 12 hours. No, that's not how it works. This could have happened with him in the house, in my humble opinion, in another room, up in a different area. It wasn't that as though Lindsay wasn't allowed to be, in a room with the children out alone by herself, right? So
I think part of the problem we have, and I assume the expert is going to talk about that, you can, enter and exit a psychotic state, coming and going. And again, part of the problem with the prosecution seemingly not understanding mental illness, or like I told one of the other reporters last week, having a 19th century view of mental illness, is that many people who can engage in conduct for which they're not criminally responsible because of mental illness can appear entirely normal. Normal is a bad word in psychiatry and forensic health, but to laypersons can appear normal, and they can come and go. And you're right. Now, whether it had to be when he went out to get dinner or not, the point is, it's a fair argument by the prosecution if they're alleging, look, she sent him out so she could do this. That is not a bad faith argument. Okay. That is a totally appropriate argument. But in terms of it being the be all end all gotcha, it doesn't work so great. Because here's the other thing. Based on what I've seen in the trial, all these mental health people that she spoke to, what did they do? Bupkis. They didn't warn him. They didn't seek to take action on behalf of the state to intervene, that she would be an imminent threat to these children. Why should the husband, in a 10-minute period of getting dinner, when she's never done this before, assume that that's the case, unless there's some other evidence where she said, if you leave me, I'm going to murder the children.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, you'd say, what are you doing? Like, call 911. So it doesn't make any sense. Look, it's a tough case for them. They've got the killing and who did it easily established, but this is going to be very tough just because of the nuance of the mental health defense and the critical fact that they need to disprove the defense argument beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to the defense having to prove it by a preponderance. That is such a big difference in Massachusetts law and other places. That is a huge problem for the prosecution.
Yeah, and it all will depend. It's all on those jurors and their ability. I do not envy anyone, and I never have on any jury, but I would not envy those jurors sitting through what they have between that 911 phone call, between all of the graphic imagery, what feels like cumulative testimony at times by first responders, and then I question anyone who does have or has struggled, any woman on that jury, that you're not clearly been in the circumstance that Lindsay Clancy has been in, but you do look and say, oh gosh, I struggled and I, went and I talked to my doctor and I got A, B, or C, or like I didn't have help. I mean, there is something that is so kind of an underbelly of our society, Mr. Bederow, that it is not addressed. And I feel like when it's Andrea Yates unaliving her children, remember that case back in Texas and Dusty? And oh my God, that case was, I was a child then, and it was still, I remember.
I mean, there's that. There was Susan Smith. Remember her?
Yes.
Strapped them in and drove into the lake, pushed the car into the lake. And look, again, it's up to any particular jury in any particular state under the state's law to determine whether these people are murderers or not responsible criminally. It's horrible in any event, but there's a lot of evidence here which would seemingly support what the defense is putting forth. And they're putting it forth all through cross-examination right now. They haven't even started. And it all feels like they've got some pretty solid momentum. I mean, that the jury is already, I mean, what is the jury right now? If you play word association, what are they thinking? Are they thinking murderer? Or are they thinking like mentally ill woman who did something really bad and it's a shame that she didn't get treated? I don't know. But if they're thinking at all about her possibly is the word, right? Reasonably possible that she couldn't act properly because of the meds and the psychosis, couldn't appreciate right and wrong, then they're going to lose.
Yeah. And I did want to touch base with you and ask what your thoughts on this. So in the United States, I feel like, which I've already said, remains kind of in the dark ages as it relates to our current insanity definition, along with postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. European legal framework recognizes that childbirth causes severe physical and psychological stress, which can diminish a mother's full culpability. Rather than prosecuting these cases as a premeditated murder, most European jurisdictions handle them under specific statutes that mandate significantly lower penalties. Example, like a manslaughter in the United States, and in the United Kingdom under their Infanticide Act of 1938. So we're about 190 years late. If a woman unalives her child under 12 months of age while the balance of her mind is disturbed by childbirth or lactation, she is guilty of infanticide instead of murder. And it's treated as manslaughter, usually resulting in probation or psychological treatment instead of life imprisonment. Now, I think probation is wild, but a psychological inpatient stay. I mean, the actual physiological, biological changes that occur in a woman's body, again, minus sans drugs, sans pharmacological intervention here, that in my humble opinion, I've thought about this even more, like this treatment that she received and the drugs in which she received potentially caused this outcome versus the postpartum or the psychosis in and of itself. Do you know what I mean? When you have a black box warning and you're being treated and you're put on these medications within 4 months and at doses that would tame the likes of PTSD in Vietnam veterans, like this is wild to see come down the pike in this case.
I mean, I can't speak to what European law is. I mean, I don't know if that's the right answer either, to immediately assume and minimize. I mean, look, the way our system is set up, each case is its own case.
Mm-hmm.
Facts are what they are. They should be presented to a jury, and ultimately a jury will determine if there's guilt, and if so, on what level, or there's a lack of criminal responsibility. I mean, I'm not qualified to know, frankly, what should be done generally with these kinds of things, other than, postpartum depression is a real thing. A lot of people have experienced it. Obviously, there's a difference between that and psychosis. I mean, like a major level. But I mean, I'm not qualified to even know how to address on a charging level whether it's appropriate or not.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean clearly. Obviously, it doesn't say like anyone who like God forgive me, it does not mean that. It means if there is a mental health applicable diagnosis and or evaluation that deems that to be fit. That's not a blanket statement for everyone. That has to be, but if there is the latter part of within 12 months postpartum, they are kind of have a different avenue or a different direction than the United States goes. And I feel, Mr. Bederow, that the long and short of this is that the reason I want to cover it is because although the loss of life of 3 beautiful children is horrific, there is no return, right? Those children, their lives matter. They deserve justice. There should be. I'm so torn emotionally because of their innocence and being gone. Yet our country, the bigger question is like, it's going to keep happening. And I feel like every time we have a Andrea Yates or we have another Susan Smith, when this comes along, people talk about it and then it's lost at the wayside again. And then there are mothers that silently go untreated, unhelped. And in this case, Lindsay went treated and she got help and she did outpatient she did therapy, she did psychiatrist, she did an outpatient partial program, which is a full day program that she would go to. Then she signs herself in, voluntarily admits to McLean psychiatric ward, locked unit. And it's like, what else could have been done?
But again, it's on the state. I mean, you miss all the warning signs, you miss the red flags. You have people providing treatment on a very serious issue that are not qualified or not experienced, or they're doing all telemedicine, doing Zoom conferences. I look, I know everything is a Zoom culture. We're basically Zooming right now. But, when you're talking about serious mental health involving a mother with, serious postpartum issues, some indicia of a potential to hurt her children, I don't know. It seems to me you might want to actually meet the person in person and know who you're talking to. And just so many things seem to have failed the whole family. And, unfortunately, the children, first and foremost, they lost their lives. The husband obviously had his whole world torn apart. And, on some level, whatever your views of Lindsay Clancy are, her. I mean, she's going to have to live with her actions. She's clearly aware of them. She clearly knows what she did is wrong at this point. She's living in a wheelchair. And she also knows that I have 2 options. I'm either going to prison for the rest of my life, or I'm going to live in a hospital for the next 30 years, probably. So, it's nobody wins in this.
Yeah. And you wonder, like, is that a way forward? Is like to know that you have a provider such as Jennifer Tufts, who is a baby doctor. And I don't mean this in ignorantly. We've all been baby professionals at one point or another. Where is that line drawn when you're continuing to make treatment changes, you're making med management changes, and you've only treated someone via telehealth, and are noting that there's deterioration, not stabilization or improvement?
Well, where's the supervision? I mean,
there it is.
Postpartum psychosis is serious, and not to equate it to lawyers, everyone has to get experience. Okay. There has to be a first time, but like as a lawyer, if you're a baby lawyer and you're working on a murder case, you're not the top guy, right? I mean, there's somebody with more experience. There ought to be a doctor involved in this process, supervising serious issues. When you're a young pilot, there has to be a first time someone's piloting the plane, and hopefully you're not on that plane, but there's going to be a lot more other experienced people watching them like a hawk, helping them through it. Where was that with this? I mean, how do you have a green doctor who has no experience, doesn't take notes, doesn't really seem to be paying a hell of a lot of attention of anything, doesn't see fit to meet in person and connect with the person who is basically crying for help, it's just an ultimate failure. And the lack of supervision, I'm sure, will be a critical issue at the lawsuit that is coming down the pike with all of this. But having a young, inexperienced doctor who, at least as it relates to this case, based on her inexperience, her treatment appears incompetent. She may be a very smart person. She may be a very qualified doctor, but to not even write stuff down, to not have any memory about what they were doing because I didn't write it down, I didn't meet her, I didn't do this, dealing with something as serious as potential postpartum psychosis, it's horrible.
Yeah, and we have a saying in the medical field is if you didn't document it, you didn't do it. And I know that there are a lot of our notes and the systems that are electronic now. It's fill in the blanks, right? You have to check a box. You have to check a box on certain things and you don't. And that is where the depersonalization and the healthcare industrial complex of this country is heavily noted, right? In my opinion, because you still have a narrative. And in all of my patients that I am seeing, I will always have a subjective. I will always have a patient states, ba-ba-da-beep-ba-ba, and you write it down. And those are the important things. And when you make mistakes or you are struggling, or if your caseloads, if you're expected to see too many patients, I know that she had documented it was 17 minutes. These are things that no one thinks that the unthinkable is going to happen. But when you're seeing someone that is not improving and you're documenting that and you're trying to you're changing meds, you're doing all of these things in very short time frames. Again, Mr. Bederow, remember, this is a 4 months of time straight from September to January. That's it. And these actions that were taken by providers show absolute negligence at best.
It looks like the medical treatment for this young doctor was, it's time to make the donuts. Who's next? These are your 30 minutes. Let's have the meeting. Let me log in my time, fill out my billing sheets, and, hit the buzzer. Next. Who's next? And, it's also worth noting, these are not underprivileged people, the Clancys.
Yes.
These are, they're not billionaires or anything like that. These are not underprivileged people who are just getting, they presumably have access to, more opportunity than underprivileged people. And what would it be like then? If all of this is just an incredible feeling.
Yeah. And that is something that I did want to touch on, is that this doesn't have anything to do with socioeconomic. It doesn't race, religion, socioeconomics. There is nothing that can prevent something like postpartum depression, anxiety, and the life-threatening emergency of postpartum psychosis. It is a medical emergency. Every nurse will tell you that. Any doctor, any NP, any PA will say, if you have a patient that is in a true postpartum psychosis, it is a medical emergency that could be life-threatening to the risk of yourself and others. Why is it that our country, the United States of America, has the highest mortality of postpartum mothers, of their own selves, of suicide risks? That is also postpartum psychosis. It's not just the unaliving of your children, it's the unaliving of yourself. And these are things that you need to, or we need to come to terms with, of what kind of screening tools, which were not used by any of these providers, appropriate ones, what kind of screening tools, what kind of assurances can it be? Because there's a guilt and a shame associated. I know for myself, when you're going to that appointment, and although you might look at the check boxes, Mr. Bederow, and say yeah, I'm feeling that way, I don't want that in my medical record. I don't want anyone to they're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm failing. Why is this hard for me and it's not hard for other moms? again, not the extent in which it occurred to Lindsay, but like you have all of those fears, all of those stigmas, all of those doubts, and there needs to be something, in my opinion, that can prevent, that can be of treatment for mothers, but also preventing catastrophe and unbelievable negative outcomes to occur.
Yeah, I mean, you think America would be the best at everything, but there's a long way to go with this sort of thing, and I don't know what the answer is. It's not. It's a problem when you talk about all these people that are committing suicide, or other terrible things, or just suffering from this level of depression, anxiety, psychosis. I don't know what the answer is. People like me, unfortunately, get involved when something bad has happened, like here. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, I have a question for you regarding a mistrial. So when yesterday's testimony was occurring and Lindsay is having a guttural reaction to Dr. Renee Stonebridge, who a lot of us would remember from Officer John O'Keefe's huge brain stem and all of his fractures, etc. She was the neuro pathologist and medical examiner for the Karen Read trial. When she got up on the stand and it recounted the injuries to both Dawson and Cora, this reaction that was ended up being shut down by the judge, and a recess had to be taken to come back in. There was a curative instruction, but is there a possibility that the prosecution could ask for a mistrial because of it, or no?
They better not, or that's going to be the end of the case. I mean, they caused the reaction.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean by putting on evidence and the defendant has an emotional outburst that they caused it, but it was, again, evidence of limited probative value whose prejudice was substantially outweighed by its prejudicial impact. The defense argued again and again and again, we don't need this, we'll stipulate to this. Prosecution said, no, we're doing this. They put it in front of the jury. A mother is watching autopsy photos and descriptions of her kids and loses it and has an emotional outburst, which was clearly real.
Yes.
It doesn't describe. You don't get a mistrial. And as a prosecutor, you don't ask for a mistrial on that because the defense would argue that you caused the mistrial. Therefore, double jeopardy will kick in. There's no manifest necessity, is the legal buzzword, to allow a retrial. And that was an own goal. I mean, they caused that. Forget the law. As a practical, strategic thing, they wanted to make sure the jury got the whole treatment of those poor, god-awful photos that, thank God, none of us saw. And if you haven't seen autopsy photographs, they're the worst thing in the world, especially of children. They will scar you for life. And I can't imagine how the jurors are dealing with this. And I can't imagine how anyone else in the courtroom seeing those kind of pictures deals with that. Doctors can deal with it because it's what they do. They're wired differently. But those pictures are horrible, especially when they're, well, some are worse than others when they, do a full. But they caused it. They wanted to do it. There was an objection to it again and again. And she reacted. And the judge, I mean, he did the right thing. He got the jury out of there as quickly as he could, although not quick enough.
Yeah.
Right? Saw it. And, you can tell the jury as many times as you want to, never mind the man behind the curtain over there. But they're not going to forget that. You don't think every juror went home last night and had nightmares? I'm listening to this woman wailing in a courtroom as photographs and testimony about her dead children that she killed were being bandied about the courtroom.
Yeah. 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 I mean, again, I just continue to go back to the prosecution and I wonder, is there a world, Mr. Bederow, where it would have made sense to charge differently, or
what do you mean?
Or meaning, instead of 3 counts of first degree unaliving. Could they have gone for, like, I don't know, I don't even know, manslaughter, or could they have tried to charge differently and then not have, I don't think it would have been a
If they
I
do
don't
that,
think it would have come as hard.
if they do that though, then they ought to look in the mirror and say, why am I prosecuting at all?
Okay.
I mean, look, she intentionally, in terms of the act that was committed, with the intent to end their lives. Again, whether you think legally she's responsible or not, she took the exercise bans and used them. There's evidence that some of these kids fought back and she continued to do it. So her actions were, in a literal sense, intentional. Threshold question is, are we doing this at all? But if you're going to do it, you have to charge 3 counts of murder, because how pathetic would they look? I mean, they should own it one way or the other.
Own it, yeah.
Either an absolutely disgusting murderer, or she is a mentally ill woman who did a horrible thing. There's no middle ground here, right? And that cop out and would be weak. The same way, that's why they have to charge 3 counts. I mean, what are you going to do? Separate between victims? I mean, it's all or nothing here. Just, it seems to me that there's, so far, a lot of evidence which would suggest that it may be nothing in a legal sense because of her state of mind. And, you know, again, I think in other states, they might not proceed with this case. And those are states where, like where I am, where there's an affirmative defense. You have a burden. I mean, you can't just say, well, you know, you have to prove that this is what happened. And even, you know, that happens more than you think. Not that often, but it does happen. And so they need to own it. If they think she did it, they need to try her in a legal sense, try her for that reason. The only thing that I would say is they should own it, but they should own it credibly, which is the woman is ill. Okay. Noted. The woman had postpartum psychosis. Noted. The woman was spiraling out of control and needed help. Noted. But under the law, instead of the way they're trying to do it, which is dirty her up, portray her as, you know, a selfish monster. I thought I had silence on, but I guess not. They're just doing it in a way that strikes me as odd. And look, ultimately, the jury will say whatever they say. And if they find her guilty, then, you know, I guess they're the smart ones. But I'm sitting here in their case in chief and wondering, as a legal exercise, and look, we're all just, who are we really? We're all like the 2 guys on the Muppets watching and commenting. We're not there. We don't know what's really going on. But there seems to be a lot of mental health evidence that would tend to suggest that something was wired differently, where on some level she clearly knew what she was doing wrong, but she couldn't behave. That's a colloquial term, obviously.
Behave.
She could not conform her conduct to what the law requires. And by the way, all Reddington has to do is say, is that a reasonable argument? If there is a doubt that maybe she couldn't do that, she's not guilty. That's the problem with the burden of not guilty by reason of lack of responsibility. But that's the problem with the affirmative defense here, right? But because it's not an affirmative defense, the defendant doesn't have to argue that the evidence proves this. They just have to poke that doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do respect everybody in my chat. Like, and we know that we don't have to have the same opinion here. What I may think, and I'm still listening. I am still, my ears are open. I am always available for new information to form our opinions. And so far, what I have seen is not the Commonwealth proving the elements that they need to regarding this, and knowing that she did commit the crime, but that I feel that I don't know how they're presenting certain aspects in the way in which they are. And that is why I wanted to know from you, do you think that there is going to be, if you were a betting man, how much longer do you think the Commonwealth would have?
God, if I were them, I hope not much longer.
Yeah.
Look, they opted to do it in a way where they're holding their fire on the mental health stuff. It's obviously coming out on cross, and they're asking a lot of questions about it, but the defense case is going to be almost entirely psychiatric.
Mhm. Yes.
And then there'll be a rebuttal case with their own expert, and it's going to be very fascinating to see how the prosecution expert tries to pick apart the report and testimony of the defense expert, again, with the burden of proof. I mean, it can't even be, they have to obliterate the defense expert. It's not just a battle of experts where they cancel each other out. If they cancel each other out, that's a win for the defense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if there's an affirmative defense, that's a win for the prosecution, because your defense is carrying a burden. They're not going to meet it if their expert is not all that impressive, or we don't know. But in this case, a draw between the experts, if that were even to happen, with everything else going on, maybe puts a kernel of doubt in the jury's mind. So, well, that's possible. They didn't really discredit the defense expert.
Yeah. Now, so there was another case out of, I don't remember if it was out of Texas, but it was Carol Corchado, and it was like so sad. There's I watched a YouTube documentary on her. I don't know why. Clearly, because I've been watching Clancy stuff, my algorithm is wild. And this was a young mother who unalived her 3 children, and you heard her calling her mother the day of the unalivings, and she is just hysterical, and she's saying, "Mom, something's wrong. Please call me back. I need help right now." You can hear the baby crying in the back. I mean, it's just like, it's gut wrenching. And she was convicted. All right. And she was by reason of insanity. She was pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. And she was found guilty. I think back to Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity, right? She's in a mental hospital still.
I don't remember. I feel like maybe she was convicted, and maybe it got reversed, and then
yes.
I think she had quite an odyssey in court. But look, the defense doesn't work all the time. In fact, it doesn't work most of the time. But yeah,
you're right.
But a lot of times the defense is asserted, and it's almost borderline frivolous. It's just, well, I gotta, I need some defense. Here, it's a colorable defense. I mean, this is, it's a strong defense. I mean, the indicia of her illness, whether she's guilty or not, is strong.
For sure. And I just wanted to clarify, babes, I just Googled it. So it says, in July of 2006, a Texas jury found Andrea Yates not guilty by reason of insanity during her high-profile retrial. Her original 2002 capital murder conviction was overturned on appeal due to erroneous false testimony from a prosecution medical expert. She was following the retrial verdict. She was committed to a secure state psychiatric facility. So
my memory was right.
You're very
all right. Good,
Mr. Bederow. Look at you. So, but those are the things that I'm looking at this and coming in. I mean, I recall. I think for me, it specifically just being a nurse and knowing that Lindsay was an L&D nurse, to know all of the attempts of help that she sought, and it just feels different for whatever reason, because a lot of us can say, like, I didn't know what you didn't know what you didn't know. The signs were there, but like they weren't, because you weren't managed appropriately. And it's like, but you're seeing this, and it was just like a perfect storm of just everything failing, and then the most unbelievable negative outcome and loss of life. And for me, I wonder, and I know we can't speculate really truly, but like, I hope that the jury does like that they just follow the letter of the law and their instructions, because I don't know how you go. It feels such a juxtaposition of like, you can have sympathy, you can have so much empathy, and then you see those babies, and it's like it's such a it's such an internal struggle for so many people. There are many people that I love and care about that say to me, she should go to jail forever. Like and I'm like, well, there's a little bit of nuance here. We have to, and they're like, no,
there is nuance, but there are many people who are going to assume that, you know, she belongs in prison. And listen, wait to the summation. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait to the prosecution summation, where they're going to want to put pictures of the children up and talk about in detail how she took an exercise band and wrapped it and pulled. And I don't want to.
I can't.
They're going to do it. Clearly, look at the way they're going to do it. And I mean, legally, they're entitled to. Again, they can argue,
and it's true. Yeah,
it's true. But really, what they're going to need to focus on is, you know, they got to print out the jury instruction and focus on that, and what the judge is going to read the jury when they explain, you know, what does it mean to not, you know, conform your conduct to the requirements of the law, and argue why that. I mean, if they're doing a summation in this case, there should be 5 minutes in the summation, the first 5 minutes, saying clearly we've proven that she did it. Okay. You know, in other words, like a traditional murder case, that there were deaths and she caused it and she intended to do it. That's 5 minutes. I mean, that's just not what this is all about.
Right.
It's all psychiatric. And you know, they're going to have to switch to that focus, because there's very little awareness of that, at least right now, from their standpoint.
You know, Mr. Bederow, I feel like I'm looking at some of these providers as well, these outpatient providers, and even Dr. Goodhart from McLean. When I'm hearing them speak, and their actions and their med changes and their documentation are such opposing kind of pieces of evidence here, that it is a little bit shocking to me. And I mean that like this, right? So you're telling me that there was all these med changes, you're increasing doses, you're changing up medications because it's not working, you're noting that there is a deterioration, which Tufts would say that is not my word choice. You had 3 boxes you could check. Well, let me tell you something, babe. If she wasn't getting worse and she was stable, you would have picked stable. And if she was improving, you would have picked improving. But all 14 of your telehealth fucking visits, you did deteriorating, right? Or nothing was improving. There was never an improvement. Now, when you're asking for different levels of care, now this was interesting. Although she did not have a plan, allegedly, she had this passive suicidal ideation. There is still, with passive, an ability for us as clinicians to determine whether you are a risk to yourself or others. Another idea of passive suicidal ideation would be this. Sometimes I think I could just go lay I could lay on the beach and let the ocean take me away. That's not a plan. That's not you saying like, I want to die. I want to go to the ocean and walk in and never come back. But like, sometimes I just think about laying there and a wave will take me away. Okay. I'm just saying, but you have to assess that risk, right?
Yeah. That's
now,
a red flag, obviously, even if
no
it's
shit. So this is what I'm saying though, is like, how did all of these people go from she needs therapy to she needs an IOP program, which is that partial outpatient program where she's going for a day, like she has to go to a fucking day program for her psychiatric care because she's deteriorating. And then she checks in for a voluntary psychiatric admission in a locked unit at McLean. Get out of town. If you walking assholes are going to tell me that there was nothing there, or like, we didn't have any reason for us to step in on a legal forefront. Yes, you did, because somebody in our chat about 40 minutes ago said wild that Karen Reed was sectioned from an accident scene. Okay. Karen Reed didn't say, I have a plan. I'm thinking about, you know what? Mrs. Reed said, hey, make sure she doesn't have her meds in her purse. And that was the only thing that was ever said. There was never a plan. So you're all covering your own asses. And I feel that, like, I get the need to. I understand that you have to, and that if you're kicking yourself in the ass for maybe not seeing or not doing what you maybe should have, but I'd have more respect if you said like, I could have done it. I could have sectioned her. I absolutely could have without a plan, because now you have the entire world watching this trial and thinking I'm not going to get help, or I couldn't be sectioned, or they can't do anything to me if I say I don't have a plan. That's a lie.
It's a hell of a standard.
Yeah. Yeah. A hell of a standard. And I just I don't know. It all feels fugazi. It feels a little bit like it's Chinatown, Jake. You know, with them.
It was not impressive. Again, whatever Clancy's state of mind was in terms of criminality or not, the back and forth with the people who were treating her and aware of her condition were less than impressive. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you just think about the other moms, like you're saying, if she had again, not saying that they're affluent, but Duxbury, that is a wealthy town, a seacoast town, very wealthy. And this idea that Lindsay, that's presented in opening, that like she just didn't want to be a mom anymore. Like, I had these 3 kids. I had a white picket fence and a decent relationship with my husband. Shit goes bad. Everyone's relationship is not perfect, but I wanted all 3 of these children. I was going out, or I had Patrick that very night go to get our daughter Pedialax, because I wanted her to have bowel movements. That's where you can't get me of like, she's trying to get out of this, and she was desperate in the way to get out when she took her to the pediatrician that morning.
You're making a strong argument for being within the throes of a psychotic episode and it making you unable to conform your conduct to the requirement of the law. I mean, if she's trying to care for the children, consistent with trying to kill them, obviously. And what did I see today? That they had some journal entry of her or whatever, where she said, I wanted to have another kid, but I'm not ready yet. I need to get treated. But like, in other words, I do want to be a mother. So again, I just think the prosecution they don't understand the nuance of these mental health issues. They do have an archaic view of it. They don't really have, I don't think, a very credible emotional reaction to it. And I think they could have really gained a lot of respect and credibility with the jury, which is very important, if they owned it. I mean, just be credible and then lean on the jury about your duty. And then, the chips fall where they do. And remember, this is the kind of murder case where if she wins, it's a Pyrrhic victory. Okay. She's not walking out of the courthouse. She wouldn't be walking anywhere because she's in a wheelchair, but she's not getting pushed out of the courthouse to go home and stop for dinner and read a nice book on her couch. She loses either way. Now, again, many people feel justice for those children requires her to rot in prison for the rest of her life. So be it. But she's not walking out of the courtroom if she wins. A win is hospitalization, and whether she ever gets out, it would be years, whether people think she's capable of being out or not, because these things have politics. And if you think anybody is signing off on her being released, not as a danger to herself or others, for anything under 20 or 25 years, it's not going to happen.
Agreed, Mr. Bederow. And I think that I know that this is said sometimes in other unfortunate cases or crimes, that you say that living with it is a huge punishment, and living with that, she's alert, oriented, aware.
Look what you saw yesterday. That I mean, imagine, you want to live with that? I mean, It's probably every day on some level. How do you not think about that all the time? Birthdays, holidays, other things.
I believe she's still a DNR. So God forbid something goes wrong with her. She is still a DNR of like, don't. I think that if you were asked, like, could I get the death penalty and not have to be here in certain circumstances, people are like, absolutely.
She may not have a plan now, but she's certainly, a suicide risk and threat. And, when someone like her is incarcerated, they monitor that stuff because she is a major threat to try to self-harm, given, she's potentially facing prison in life. And she's already, in her mind, imprisoned mentally. I mean, how could she not be?
And in a chair. Like, that's the thing. She's confined. She's confined everywhere. And if you think for a moment that you're not replaying that and that she's not seeing what was said yesterday and what was shown every day, then I don't think you're being genuine to how palpable it is that you could like see and hear, and don't say that your lying eyes are not telling you the truth on this one. I believe Lindsay Clancy had a absolute meltdown, breakdown, physiological reaction to yesterday's testimony when Dr. Stonebridge was up there.
It's horrible. I mean, who knows if that's a daily thing or that was just pent up, who knows? I mean, look, would anybody want to trade places with her? Probably 100 out of 100 people would say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And if this will, I'm very interested to see how the Commonwealth is going to close this out. Oh, I did want to talk about today. Again, another part of their theory, right, was you were saying, we mentioned that she was looking up. They were trying to set it up as she had been planning this months. She had looked up.
Oh God, what is this? I know
months in advance. What? Okay. What? And then we find out what Mr. Bederow hit him.
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about are the searches on the computer for suicide, which have to be the husband's computer and a search term that he looked up after looking up a singer who had attempted to commit suicide. So he looked it up, and I believe he testified to that himself.
Yes.
So this ought to have been no surprise. And you sit there and you watch this and you just say, what the hell are they doing? What is this prosecution doing? How is this helping? Again, they're so hyper-focused on the suicide. Why not just focus on the fact that she did things which evince her ability to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law? That's all that matters here.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters in this case, other than them being able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that her psychotic episode didn't excuse her conduct, for lack of a better term. So why are we talking about, the suicide evidence, which they had to know was going to come out exactly the way it came out? It was husband's computer. It was, his search term. He had already said, this is what I was looking at. They knew he's a country music fan or whatever, and that the guy he looked up was like that. I mean, you'd like to think before they do that they would weigh the pros and cons of why they would do this. And I don't know. It did not go well.
No. And also you have to think about that, Mr. Bederow. How many mulligans can you have with a jury? How many times can your statements and your like fact statements, not questions, not we allege, this is you presenting as fact, is now being absolutely shredded by K-Shred, okay, in his cross. I don't understand what the point is, because then you're going to have a jury that's like, now I don't know what I should take as fact from you guys, because every time that you're putting out something that I feel is a huge point, it's absolutely being dismantled by the defense.
Well, they're hurting their credibility. They're breaking that bond of trust with the jury, and they look foolish in the process. And again, Reddington in this case is the guy, at least from this angle, who looks to be wearing the white hat. And if the defense is the one wearing the white hat, that ain't good for the prosecution, where your whole case here is just that this defendant is a scumbag. That's their case. We all know she did it. That's not in dispute. No one would dispute that.
No.
But there comes a point where you got to do better than just, she did a terrible thing. We know that. Okay. That's obvious. Nobody would dispute that. But what are you going to do to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, not only that she did it, but that I can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she had the ability to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law. I mean, I keep repeating that because that's ultimately the standard that's going to prevail here. And that's the issue. None of this other stuff is even that relevant in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
The trial has barely even started. They haven't yet gotten to what matters here. And what matters here is when the defense puts up their expert, how credible they are. And if the defense expert is credible, it's over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to see here.
Yeah. And I got to say that I wouldn't wish command or auditory or visual hallucinations on anyone. As a registered nurse who deals with a mental health population daily, and other comorbidities, to see people struggle with that and it being so real to them, have a descriptor afterwards of like, that was real. There is no distinguishing, like people would think to themselves, oh, a command hallucination can't really tell you what to do. It is like it's like somebody telling you what to do with like a gun. Do you know, like that they're forcing you to do it is how it is felt or perceived, or you believe in certain circumstances that is how you save somebody. It is completely delusional. It is completely void from reality. However, in that moment, that is what you are hearing and believe. Like it's me and you talking to each other today, right now. Like it's happening. And that is where it's just challenging to try to explain to certain people who maybe don't have a history or understand or a familial history or know anyone who this is have experienced something like that. It's jarring. It is scary. Can you imagine how terrifying it is to hear a voice that is not your own and is not like an inner monologue that some people have? I found out well, never mind, but they're hearing those things and believing that to be true. And there's amazing case studies from the 60s. Like I could put things on YouTube for you guys, but you can look and see how profound those impacts are. From that moment, they'll have memory of exactly what was said, what they were doing, and a belief of a delirious or a belief that is so distorted that I'm doing something that I have to do and that it is actually for the betterment and not for the unaliving of.
Listen,
Crazy.
it's crazy. I mean, I represented a guy a couple of years ago in Queens who butchered his father to death right in front of his mother. A horrible thing. They were a very religious family, but for all kinds of reasons. And he was at that age in his early 20s, where in men, and he was hearing voices and maybe some of this background of, the religious family about the devil was telling him to do this. And he, did a terrible thing, obviously. And then he ends up getting treated. The case resulted in a NGRI agreement the way we wanted. But you talk to this young man months or even a year later when he's treated, medicated, all that, you'd never know. You would never know that, a couple of years ago, voices were telling me that I have to do this, and that every doctor who looked at him, and there's a litany of them, agreed. Like, yeah, that's real, including the prosecutions. Yeah. Absolutely. This guy, was hearing voices. It happens. And it's hard for laypersons, to excuse the conduct. I get it. And sometimes it's not real, but ultimately it just feels like what the prosecution here is their whole strategy is never mind the mental illness. She's a horrible person who did a horrible thing. She clearly did a horrible thing. She may very well be a horrible person. That's for them to decide. But you got to do better as a prosecutor than just present evidence of the killings themselves and dirty her up as some kind of selfish monster without recognizing the obvious mental illness here, the cries for help, the efforts for help, the lack of treatment, the over medication, the incorrect medication, the lack of attention, the lack of this, the lack of that. I mean, this, when you see it, the way you look at it now, stepping back, you're like, yeah, of course this happened, right? I mean, now in hindsight, the way she was degenerating and whatnot. But until they address the real issue, they run the risk of losing for the simple reason that everybody knows she did it. You got to do better than that to win this case from their perspective.
Yeah. And I haven't seen or heard, and I would assume that in those text messages that you would see from Patrick to her, that there would have been like something that like was there that you would know. And I just don't, for me, I get that that their accusation of the planning of going to get the telling him to go get the Pedialyte and then going to get supper. But, you know, what else? Like, what else? I do think it will matter for me, Mr. Bederow, is if the command hallucination is heard before or after that phone call. And I'm interested to hear what from CVS, just for me, as you know, my history of working with mental health, because if it's right after that call, that's a wrap. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a wrap. If it's before, then you could say, you could say, does the Commonwealth have something there? And I'm very interested to know.
Yeah, it's not
we'll find out.
And I think a lot of the people who watch these cases, every time people pick a side, the other side is absolutely crazy. Sometimes, believe me, I know from personal experience, sometimes that's the case, but not all the time. Like, this case is not an unreasonable prosecution. I don't think it's being prosecuted particularly well. I'm not crazy about the personal prosecutors and their demeanor and the things that they're doing, but it's not a frivolous case because they're taking the position that she's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, including as it relates to all the mental health defenses. But I just don't know, with the burden of proof and the evidence in this case, whether they're going to get there or not, and whether, when all is said and done, was this worth it? God knows the impact this trial will have on Patrick Clancy. It's pretty obvious the impact it's going to have on Lindsay Clancy, although a lot of people may not care. Some do, some don't, about how it impacts her. God knows how it's going to impact everyone else who's family and involved in this. And I mean, you want the nightmare scenario in this case?
Yeah.
Hung jury. Now what? Now what? How can the DA, who's so dug in, at that point say, okay, fine, we'll give her the NGRI. And then you say, well, why didn't you do that the first time? Why are we even here? They're not going to have the stones to do that. They're going to want to retry her. They almost have to politically, right? What do you do? You back out from this? We investigated this case for 3 or 4 years, but now we're willing to concede that maybe, she has a valid mental health defense claim. What if they hang? What are they going to do? Can you imagine? You got to bring Patrick back to look at photos? Are you going to stipulate to all the evidence? Are we going to do this again?
Oh my God, Mr. Bederow, I didn't even that is the nightmare. Guilty or innocent. Guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity. Okay. But the hung jury would be too much for anyone to bear.
May very well have jurors who, and I don't know who's on the jury. I haven't seen them. I don't know. I'm not there. This is all, typical, again, from the Muppets balcony level analysis looking down. you could be in a situation where you have a juror who says, I know there's a valid defense here, but this woman killed her 3 kids, and there's no way I'm not voting to send her to prison, period. And you may have 3 of those and 9 of the other ones, and then they can't agree. And by the way, if you think juries in other cases are emotional and it's going to get hot in there, this is, can you imagine being that from having a disagreement about this?
No. This is going to be ugly. That deliberation is going to be, oh gosh.
The jurors are never going to recover from it. That this is going to be a life experience that they're going to kick themselves in their head and say, how the hell did I not get kicked off jury duty for this? This is going to be, whatever the verdict is or isn't,
sad.
It's going to be impactful on the rest of their lives, because this, they've had to see those photos, and those, I mean, I can picture autopsy photos I've seen before right now. They don't go away. Those images don't go away. Yeah.
Yeah, even when I'm hearing it, like, and as a medical professional, like, of course I don't like PD. I knew I could never do peds or peds oncology. Just for me, there are other nurses that can't do psych, or they can't do wound care, or they can't do the ICU. Like, it takes all different types of us to make the world go round. But even hearing it, Mr. Bederow, like, hearing it in the background as I'm doing other things, I can laser focus into when they're doing the psychiatric evaluations and all the providers on Lindsay. I can laser in when they're talking about her medical injuries. And that's critical and gnarly too. But that I cannot.
What do you do? You tell jurors every day, this, you've seen this from the other trial. Don't talk about this, don't get opinions. So you're a juror, you go home yesterday after that spectacle, right?
Yeah.
It's on your face, I'm sure. What's wrong, honey? Nothing, but I'm not talking about, to be a juror and just compartmentalize this, go to court, deal with it, and take it out of your mind, to go home and just not be impacted by that or those photos. Impossible. I can't fathom being a juror on this case.
I can't either. And, I don't know. I know it's everyone's civic duty, but it's just really, it's hard. It's harsh. It's compounding. And like any person, that toll is going to be seen afterwards. Sad.
It's not a pleasant case.
No,
not a pleasant case.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to let you go, because I know that you are still working and you're in a cream suit. And I know that I appreciate you for even hopping on with me for a midweek. But I missed having our conversations and our discussions. They're highlights of my week. And I know you're going to be busy for another couple weeks, but we'll be back at it soon.
Yeah, I need to leave the cream suit on all night too. I'm doing a very late night hit on CNN tonight, so I guess I'll keep the lawyer costume on for late night.
What time are you going on CNN?
Late, like 11:30, 11:40 or something.
Okay, we'll tune in. What show?
Not about Lindsay Clancy. It's enough Lindsay Clancy talk. About Luigi Mangione, who is apparently going to plead guilty in federal court tomorrow, which probably is going to end the state case under New York state double jeopardy law. So it's very interesting to, certainly in New York, that's much. Clancy gets a lot of coverage here, actually, in the New York Post and whatnot, but Mangione is like at a level like up to here.
Oh yeah, like through the this is unexpected though. Everyone thought he was going to plead not guilty, right?
It's actually an interesting move. He's got a trial scheduled next month in state court. If he's convicted there, which is high, not unless you get kooks on the jury, although there's a lot of kooks who do support him, he'd probably get 25 to life. So he's going to see if he can get a lesser plea in a federal case, which there's no guarantee, by the way. So it's risky. But if he goes to federal court and he doesn't get a life sentence, then they move to dismiss in state court under double jeopardy, and that's all family business is settled. It's an interesting strategy. It's very risky. He could get life without parole in federal court. He probably should.
Yeah.
Cold-blooded murder, shooting in the back, and being mad at the healthcare system doesn't justify shooting a guy in the back because he's the CEO
Never.
of America. So there's a lot of legal maneuvering going on with him. It's very interesting.
Wow. Well, I will be sure to at least record that. And
there's no guarantee. I get it. I'd have to make sure I stay away. It's a long time.
all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bederow.
All right. We'll talk.
Bye. Lovies. Stop. He's the best. Yeah. It was a lot. And I was like, I kind of asked him if he would come on with me today because I felt so emotionally charged after the last couple of days. Specifically yesterday, I was just like, oh, I need I needed a little kind of like just somebody to speak it with, because my own feelings, I don't want to get them in the way. And it's just heartbreaking. And I just think about it all. And like, I think we made it clear that I don't think there's a winner if you're not guilty. If you are found guilty, no one wins. Prosecution, no. Defense, no. Nothing will bring back Cora, Dawson, and Callum. For Patrick, and Lindsay will never be herself either. And that's why, like, I just wanted to keep covering it and keep pushing through it, because there are lessons. And instead of maybe taking that path of looking at something and saying, okay, we're going to pay attention to this right now, and then just let it go to the wayside, and maternal mental health and postpartum depression, anxiety, and psychosis is not dealt with in our country. I think it's important for there to be open communication and understanding so that it doesn't lead to anywhere near this, and we can prevent tragedy, and we can increase in positive outcomes for moms. And with that being said, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And tomorrow, Meatball, Morrissey, Sketty Stain, and I will be picking our two, I don't know, skippers or first mates for the Lake Winnipesaukee Engage a Pontoon trip. All right. I love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.
What's gotten into the people in the world today? Common sense, a man is pushed out of the way. No one's filtering the wild shit they say. Don't seem to have Tourette's, so why you're so cray-cray? You're not my friend, not my fam, not on my level, not my jam. You're the goddamn devil, I don't give a damn. When you drive through Salem, they scream, burn that witch. So shut all the way the fuck up, you dumb bitch. Please God, dear Lord, tell them to sign offline and hop on to all the good dick that you can find. Let everyone get dick down consensually. Go get you some instead of worrying about me. Everybody should be worshipped centrally. Hopefully you'll realize eventually. Get out of my face, get out of my chat. You're an ostrich, bitch, what you think about that? Well, you all way up inside my grill today. I don't think you have Tourette's, so why are you talking cray cray? You're not my friend, not my fam, not on my level, not give a damn. When you're driving through Salem, they scream, burn the witch. Shut all the way the fuck up, you dumb bitch. Get out of my face, get out of my track. You're an ostrich, bitch, what you think about that? Nurse Kim will preach it, Jimmy will teach it, other Mary B and me will art it. Last at least young jerks will fart it.
This was adapted from a non-ironic valid truth, Kimmy. It's my homework for Jimmy. Shout out to Tish, Kylie, and the other Mary B. Shout out to Zach, Mo Esk, Nicola, and Queen Valerie. Shout out to Miss Jess, Emily C, and MC Kazi G. Shout out to Ray from Dallas, Fervent, Jess, Glera,
OB and TV.